Hi, my name is Amanda. I grew up in boarding school pretty much my whole life from 5 to 18. I had a non-existent relationship with my dad most of the time growing up because he was in jail for drug trafficking, and I had a single mother at home. When I was in third grade, I somehow was introduced to sex in general, and I started looking into pornography. I didn't know it was called pornography at the time. I was just looking into like girls kissing, and it led me down the road to lesbian pornography, which I became addicted to even though I wasn't gay. I was diagnosed with depression in 7th grade. I became depressed because I just did not like boarding school. I found it really hard for me to adjust to living with a bunch of other people and having like adults who weren't my mom to tell me what to do. It started with just like the emotional depression, just being really sad, and then it led to me cutting myself. I was prescribed Prozac because my house parent saw the cuts on my arm. So they gave me Prozac, and I didn't really like how it made me feel, so I would pretend to take it and would throw it out afterwards. As this is going on, my grandma was also diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and so I had a pretty close relationship with my grandma growing up. Eventually, when she passed away, I was really upset at God. Like, I didn't really have a full understanding of who God was and his character. I just thought, like, how could a loving God allow something like this to happen to my grandma? At that point, when my grandma died, I declared myself an atheist and just decided not to believe in God. When I was 15, that's when I had my first sexual relationship. At that time, I felt like I was a late bloomer because everybody else that I was surrounded with had already had sexual relationships. Later in high school, I came to Florida for summer break, and I was with my stepmom and her 2 kids, which we share the same dad, just have different moms. So my half brother, he came up to me and asked if he basically just like asked me to have sex with him. I was just like, no, like we're siblings, like that's weird. And he wouldn't let it go. He'd keep asking me. So I brought it up to his mom, and at that point, after I told her, that is when my other brother came and picked me up, and we kind of just separated for the rest of my summer break. I graduated high school and I came to Florida to go to college. One of the things that came with the boarding school that I went to was $80,000 scholarship to school. So I came down to Florida, and I went from being super sheltered at boarding school to having unrelinquished freedom, basically. I always had this image of college being like full partying and drugs and sex, so I quickly went into that, and I got into my first real relationship, like where we were boyfriend and girlfriend. He lived with me, and he was also a drug dealer, so I had a lot of access to weed and other psychedelics like LSD. With that came New Age spirituality. I started looking into the different aspects of New Age. So one of them was like looking into psychics, how to become a psychic. I was looking into how to tell the future, and that's when I found tarot cards. I actually went to a metaphysical store with my mom, which is like the New Age store basically, and she actually bought me my first set of tarot cards. From that point on, that's when I started really like trying to speak to spirits through tarot cards and oracle cards. I stumbled upon a video on YouTube. It was a testimony of a girl who went from growing up in the Catholic Church, and then she became an atheist, and then she went into New Age spirituality, and then she became a Christian. And she kind of just went through her whole life story, and a lot of it I found myself aligning with. Like probably a few months later, I was on Instagram and I came across some girl that I followed. She had posted about a concert that somebody was hosting. It was kind of out of character for me to go to somebody's house that I didn't know to watch them sing, but I went. And as soon as I get there, like I lock my keys in my car, which is something that happened a lot because I was a pothead and I'd forget like that my keys were in my car. Within 10 minutes, I realized that this was a Christian girl and she was singing Christian music and singing to God. And I was very turned off. At the beginning, I was like, I don't want to be here, but like I couldn't leave because my keys were locked in the car. So I just kind of stuck it out. And by the end of the night, I was like, well, there's something different about her. Like she had that Jesus glow, you know, like the love of God was shining on her. And I knew that that was something that was attractive. I was doing my tarot card reading. I had my cards out and my oracle cards, and I was trying to basically figure out the future. And as I was doing it, I had like this overwhelming feeling of just like, this is not good. I shouldn't be doing this. And I had the urging to ask God to present himself to me because like I didn't know what else to do at that point. So I prayed, and as soon as I asked for his forgiveness, and I had the overwhelming sense of the love and the peace that I was trying to find in all these other things like drugs and relationships. And I realized that was what I was looking for. It could only be found through Jesus in a relationship with him. So I gathered all my supplies. I had crystals, I had books, different stuff that I had bought over the years, and just gathered them all and threw them out and gave my life to Christ. The last 4 years, God really changed my life. Obviously, I was dealing with some severe mental illness before I became saved, and God healed me from that. And he also just restored how I viewed him and men in general, because I had some, daddy issues, and that like bled into my relationship with God. So that he started healing that in me, and also just people in general. I started seeing people differently, and I started realizing that everyone's hurt in some way or the other, and that God still created them in his image, and that they're all worthy of love and of his love. Keep praying for your friends and family, especially those who seem far from God. I was the furthest that anybody could be from God, yet God pursued me, and he found me at the lowest part of my life, and yet he continued to pursue me in different ways. And it took time, obviously. It's not going to happen overnight. Everything's in God's timing, but there's so much importance in praying for them and just being a good friend to them.